Hey guys, how's everyone doing tonight? Sorry about the late start, by the way. Just let me know if you guys can hear me properly, and hopefully the stream is working well. Antonio Captain Ahmed says, let's actually start with the poll for captaincy, to be honest, because I would actually like to know how many people are not going Ronaldo at this moment in time. All right, I'm gonna start up the poll. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Hey Franco, how are you? Hey Alan, nice to see you as well. Notorious, nice to see you. Hey Craig, hey Rob. Let's see what Rob has mentioned. Um, so Rob says, you think you're going to wait and see with Bamford kind of annoyed now, use your free transfer from Shaw to Rudiger to avoid a price rise. Yeah, no, I completely understand that, and that's sometimes why the general argument that kind of trying to budget up is not always the way to go. I think last season I actually amassed a fantastic budget because I was always trying to capitalize on price rises, and I don't think really my team was any much better for it. At some instances, I think capitalizing on key fixtures is a big part of FPL. In terms of the transfers that I made, guys, you can probably tell that I've gone for -4 actually. So I've gone for Sar, I've dropped Greenwood, and I've gone into Sar. I'm going to trust Jota for a while, and hopefully he can pan out for me. And I've actually gone for Saint Maximin. I think the main reason why I've gone for Saint Maximin is I just think that from the eye test, I don't think he's the most efficient player ever. No, I think he's obviously a very kind of ball intensive. He needs the ball on his feet type of player. But I think, simply put, I do think he is somewhat unguardable. And what I like about him, if I had to make a comparison to very elite dribblers, is for example, when you look at Isco and his first season in Real Madrid, he was very, very undirect as a player. Whereas Saint Maximin is someone at this stage in his career, and I think he has more room to develop, obviously, even as the season goes on. But he is trying to be as direct as possible, and even though his expected goal numbers aren't very good, his expected assist numbers are actually the highest in Newcastle on a per 90 basis, which is actually a good sign, in my opinion, that he at least makes some good decisions inside the box. And I think, that finish versus Leeds was, of course, fantastic. It wasn't the greatest opportunity, so that's, for example, a good example of a low XG chance. But I do think he's actually, you know, a very direct and precise player in some games, especially in easier games. Who should I replace, Ailing or Bamford for, or Reece James? I think, to be quite honest, like for this week, I wouldn't recommend replacing Ailing now. I think it's a tough kind of game week to replace Ailing because I would say Ben White, who's a good kind of 4.5 option or 4.4 option, is playing versus Tottenham, and I think this week is probably the best week to kind of move away from Bamford. I think you can also hold on to Reece James because I do believe that during the easier run of games, Tuchel will basically play Reece James, as much as possible. And if you have other issues in your team, it'd probably be worth looking at those. Um, Matthew says he doesn't have Ronaldo. Antonio has per 90 better stats than Salah this year and is attacking a depleted Leeds. That's very shaky indeed. One thing I will say, Matthew, is that yes, the attacking stats absolutely matter. But you also have to factor in that Salah can actually get bonus points if he scores, and Antonio is going to get less points as well per goal. And clean sheet points can also factor into whether or not Salah is a better captaincy shout. So I think those kind of things do matter. Video doing the rounds on Twitter of Rafinha getting off Leeds team bus in London. So is that basically a suggestion that he's going to play the game? I think the idea is maybe that even if Rafinha might be injured, he could be coming off the bench potentially. That his injury situation isn't that serious. But I'm not exactly sure if he plays once again the full 90 minutes. It seems like maybe if he plays, he might play once again 60 minutes or maybe conversely 30 minutes as a substitute. I will be looking at some teams on Twitter. My Twitter DMs are closed, so if you were someone who has previously contacted me before, I could respond to your teams. So Linesh, for example, has kind of provided one of the teams. Very interesting template. Already having the Man City players in this team, and just I guess what we need to work on is those Chelsea players. But yeah, let's have a look at this team. So is it worth taking a hit to bring in Antonio and Sissoko for Torres and Scarlett? I mean, does the hit involve I guess it's a -4, that's my assumption. I do think it makes sense though. But one thing I would say about Torres is with the shape of your team, I think you can actually afford to play someone like a Duffy this week as opposed to Torres if you're not confident about Man City's chances of scoring. Because I think Torres in 2 weeks' time, sometimes you have to kind of practice, patience with some players. And Torres is the type of player, in my opinion, who even in the Liverpool game could score as well. Because whenever we see those kind of Man City Liverpool games, they're usually quite high scoring. And I think if Pep has the faith to play Torres in that game, then I do think he's interesting. I might actually hold a wait and see approach with Torres and try and go a little bit longer term with him, especially since you already have a strong bench. In terms of taking Antonio in, I do think it's very good, but I also still like Saint Maximin and Ronaldo. So my issue is that if you take those hits now, your team is still kind of far away from, I guess, what you'd like it to be during that kind of Chelsea run, right? Because we have to still replace Shaw eventually, and then maybe even think about replacing Jota. So I guess you might have to also make an assessment between whether you prefer Jota or Torres. I'm tempted to say Torres might be still a bit more interesting than Jota for now, even though Jota, of course, has the nicer fixture. So I'd rather maybe you just spend a transfer this week, or hold it and roll it, to be honest, so that you can actually improve your team so that by the time those Chelsea games come around, you're better equipped to kind of move into Chelsea. That's my personal opinion, given the fact that you don't have a Chelsea player. Let's have a look at some of those kind of YouTube comments for a second, though, just before I head back into Twitter. Let's have a look. So Todd West says, cheers, Fran. Would you play 4-3-3 with Rudiger, Diaz, Marcel, Livramento, Salazar, Greenwood, Antonio, St. Maximin, Ronaldo, or should I add Traore and sit either Marcel or Livramento? I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think Traore could be a little bit more interesting than maybe Marcel or Livramento potentially. But I would probably go for Livramento if I was being honest with you. I kind of like the setup with going for Livramento and then maybe dropping Marcel. So that's kind of how I would probably see things. Should you take a -4 to get Jota to Sar? That's a tough one. I would have to kind of know who else is in your team because, as I said, just looking at, for example, the last person's team with Torres inside, I think you want to have a look at whether Jota is actually worth getting out now in this game week and whether you have any other kind of alarming issues in your team. I do think this is a great game week for Sar, though, especially since I think there was some news as well with maybe some Newcastle defenders being injured or some key players also not sitting out for this game. So, yeah, I think it does make sense in general as long as your team is in quite a healthy shape. Should you upgrade Gilmore or downgrade Bruno to get Sar, or should I move to Lukaku early by shipping out Bamford for -4? I wouldn't move to Lukaku early this week, to be honest. I'd probably upgrade Gilmore potentially, but I have to kind of know exactly what your team is. Maybe if you already have Ronaldo, then it makes sense to have Lukaku. If you're running with the premium, then that could make sense. You can you can at me on Twitter, but I'll also respond to super chats as well. Using my wildcard, I really have a good feeling that 3 Chelsea defenders is going to boost my overall rank. But do you think Lukaku will be a must if I already have Ronaldo? So I think the interesting about Ronaldo and Lukaku is, let's just quickly look at the fixtures, right? With Lukaku, I think the issue is clearly from the Norwich game onwards, I think you have 3 fantastic games. So these are the games where I would say Lukaku is a must-have, arguably. These are probably 3 of the worst defenses in the league, not including Leeds. And I think you must have Lukaku during that period. Versus Southampton and Brentford, I'm not exactly so sure about it. I do think Southampton away from home are probably a little bit of an easier task, and I think Lukaku can haul. But especially if you're maybe holding on to Ronaldo, I can see definitely the arguments for maybe only going for Lukaku at the Norwich game. Whereas, for example, when you look at Ronaldo, all you have to kind of sit Ronaldo through if you want to hold on to him for a little while longer is that Everton game at home, which clearly is not a red fixture. I think people have been kind of swayed by the way FPL, like official FPL, have done their kind of difficulty ratings, and I really think, Everton at Old Trafford, there's no way that's a red match for Ronaldo. I think Leicester, even at this point in the season, maybe early on in the season expectations, you would have said this was a great fixture, but with the way Leicester are playing right now, especially on the defensive level, I would say it's not that. I think you can definitely keep Ronaldo until game week 9, at which point I would consider Lukaku almost essential. I think also the triple Chelsea issue is that I think you could still deal with, for example, a triple Chelsea defensive formation where maybe 2 players out of the 3 get rotated, potentially due to the fact that Chelsea have to kind of compete with the Champions League fixtures, and kind of play on all fronts, especially with them, I think, still being active in cups. So I'm going to end the captaincy poll. Ronaldo is clearly one. But I think there's no real wrong captaincy shout this week, in my opinion. I actually think Antonio has a fantastic shout to do well because Leeds are simply terrible. But I also think that, United at home. I mean, I have to say, in that Newcastle game, for example, they didn't look good for all 90 minutes, right? There were clearly moments where they were looking pretty poor, but I think simply right now, when you actually look at the statistics, I mean, Ronaldo's expected goal numbers are fantastic, and the team is trying to service him. One argument that I would say is that we have to kind of factor in how Cavani will impact the game potentially. Maybe Antonio could be the more explosive pick, although the betting odds don't seem to actually agree with that. I think there are higher odds and better odds for Ronaldo to hold better. Rafinha was limping off the bus. Oh gosh, okay, that's not a good sign. Alan says, "Hey Fran, do you think it's worth to do a -4 from Troy to Benrahma?" Probably not. I don't think Benrahma holds anything that's too significant. Maybe he'll get a goal. I don't think he'll get one of those kind of double-digit goal and assist games. And it is still a nice game ultimately for Traore. Maybe it really depends. Yeah, I don't know. I would personally not do that because I think, I guess you are facing Leeds. Maybe you could do that if you're not a fan of Traore. I just wonder how long you've been holding Traore. But yeah, I think fair enough. If you want to go for a -4, that's fine. It's just sometimes hard to factor in how I feel about Traore because I was never into him in the first place, I think. So I don't know exactly what your arguments were for picking him up, but I guess if you expected him to be a bit more clinical, I guess he hasn't really lived up to this expectation. So maybe if you want to go for Benrahma, that makes sense. But do, of course, worry that Benrahma has some issues of his own. He is dealing with a little bit of a deeper squad where, he could be rotated out, when it comes to 70 minutes, maybe in the mid-80s, or the early 70s, rather. Do you know if Bamford is out this week only? I really don't know, Howard. I'm sorry about that. There's no way I can really tell. Unfortunately, I just don't have access to Leeds and their information. From the sounds of it, though, I think it does seem like he might be out for 2 weeks, but keep in mind as well that there's an international break as well. Quick question, what team do you support? I actually support Real Madrid. My Spanish side of the family is actually based in Madrid. But I'm probably the most unbiased Real Madrid fan you'll find. So you won't see any kind of big slander of any kind of other teams over here. James or Alonso? I think Alonso is more interesting. I think people were kind of mentioning the fact that, Chilwell still looks out of form, out of shape. And whilst I do really like Reece James as a player, I think Alonso is somewhat more nailed than him right now. And I think when the season started, we probably weren't expecting that, but I think that's the case. Will Greenwood start ahead of Cavani? I think probably yes. I think, Cavani hasn't started an official match. I expect Cavani to come off the bench. Who would you start in the back three out of James, Duffy, Semedo, Livramento, and Trent? I would definitely start Trent. I would probably play. Okay, so Duffy's versus Crystal Palace. I'm actually tempted to go James, but I don't want him to play garbage minutes, which could be a possibility. Maybe I would actually still go with Trent, James, and maybe Duffy, to be honest, because I think Crystal Palace is probably a slightly easier fixture to keep a clean sheet in. I still think Wolves will build chances with Southampton, and I don't know, Southampton to have 3 clean sheets in a row, I guess, is a bit of a reach. I personally just think that, yeah, Duffy might be a little bit ahead of Livramento. I'm not a huge fan of Semedo, so I can't really comment on that. But to be honest, I think your backline is so solid that I would usually like to play a back four with that. Who should I replace with Bamford with? Say Max or Antonio. I think Antonio makes the most sense if you're replacing Bamford this week. I mean, simply put, it's such a good fixture for West Ham, especially with the kind of injury conditions that Leeds are kind of facing, and it's a huge impact. So I think, especially if you guys are, let me actually kind of have a look at the Rafinha situation, because Rafinha. Because if Rafinha is limping, I actually think that I might actually switch my captaincy to to Antonio. I'm not actually joking. I don't know if that says anything though. He is not playing. He's playing. Oh, that's a tough one. All right. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, that video, he's obviously limping that video, so that's not a good sign. But one thing I will say is that if you were watching that Newcastle game last week when Rafinha was substituted, one of the big impacts was actually when Rafinha was taken off. You could see that Leeds clearly couldn't keep a hold of the ball because he is also kind of used as a distribution outlet, and they simply couldn't keep the ball in the opponent's kind of half. And because of that, I think that gives West Ham, for example, plenty of opportunities to actually hammer in chances. Total Tactics Football. To take Sar for Torres or ASM for Bamford, I'd probably take it's a tough one. I'd probably go ASM for Bamford, but I think if you still have your wild card, then maybe Sar for Torres makes sense, because if you have your wild card, then you don't have to feel bad about the long term effects of going for Sar in the short term. Who would you start in a back three? I'm sorry, I've responded to that already. Do you prefer Chelsea defense double up or one from Chelsea and one from Man City defense? I actually prefer a back. I would actually like to move into a back four. I know it sounds ludicrous, but I would like to go two Chelsea defense, one Trent and one Diaz or Cancelo. Is it worth removing Torres because you might want Torres after the wild card? I think so, because if you have a wild card, you have the security of removing Torres for the short term and then actually getting him back in the medium term when you get that wild card in. You don't think he's limping. I do think I don't think he's. I mean, I don't know. It definitely looks like he's hurt. I don't really know. I can't armchair analyze from a 5-second clip though, to be honest. So only thing that kills me, I'm going Antonio captain, but I'm not captaining 12.7 player. Sounds awful. Yeah, no, I agree with that, Craig. To be honest, that's obviously a big argument, but ultimately, I think you have to try and be logical with the best pick this week, and I actually think the best pick is either Antonio or Ronaldo, and I wouldn't really be opposed to either. I'm just personally a little bit maybe favoring Ronaldo because I guess to one extent I am playing effective ownership. I did get ASM, so I've actually taken a -4. The money remaining will actually eventually go into Chelsea and Man City defenders. So my general kind of plan, I think, in the future is maybe going for Rudiger or Alonso if I want to kind of chance things a little bit more, and then maybe going for Diaz, and then dropping Ronaldo to Lukaku in game week 9, where I think Lukaku is essential. That is my general opinion on things, and I might take -4s along the way, if I see fit. Maybe he hit his leg on the door, but I think the issue though, Rob, is I think he was already kind of supposedly injured, so that's not a good look for him. I did take a -4 for Saint Maximum, yes. Basically, my long-term plan, I think, is like if you look at someone like Tony, for example. Tony has terrible fixtures, right, for the next 4 weeks, and then I would say a rather smooth run from maybe at game weeks 10 onwards. So I would like to maybe capitalize Tony a little bit later. So I would rather kind of play with the forward in that price range, and then move to Tony eventually. That's my general plan. You already have Ronaldo and Antonio. What should you do with Bamford and Torres? I would probably be more interested in taking away Bamford for now. Once again, it depends on whether you have a wild card. I think if you have a wild card, you can probably maybe keep Bamford on your bench for now, and then maybe try to capitalize on Sar. I think we as FPL managers become detectives for no reason. I mean, I think a lot of people try to infer stuff, maybe a bit too much, but I think part of it too is because we've been hurt quite a few times when we haven't been, I guess, doing our homework, right? For example, like the Dominic Calvert-Lewin injury, no one knew anything about it, and my wild card in a sense was kind of ruined because I've been wasting subsequent transfers on assets that I didn't really intend on replacing in the short term. But that's how things are, and the same thing with the Bamford transfer. Would you transfer out Man City defenders, midfielders, for the next 2 weeks? Potentially. I still think that Liverpool game is quite a good one, though. I think usually Man City Liverpool is quite a high scoring, kind of high octane affair. So it's quite a nice one for me. Take a -4 to get ASM in for Jimenez, or take a -4 to get Sar in for Rafinha. I'm probably more interested in getting Sar in for Rafinha, in my personal opinion, especially since Jimenez is a playing player. There's a bit more doubt in Rafinha, and I think the explosiveness for Sar in this game week is a little bit better. Thoughts on Kovacic and Odegaard, looking to pick up some differentials that not too many people use in bank 1 mil profit. I completely understand the sentiment about the banking 1 mil profit. Aswin, I've already responded to you. Should I take -4 and get in Antonio by replacing Bamford? Yeah, you can do that. But please try not to spam the chat. I will respond to Twitter in a brief second. Who did I take out for ASM? I took out Bamford for ASM. In terms of Kovacic and Odegaard, just going back to your question, I think Kovacic is not so interesting because you want to have three other Chelsea players in my opinion. I would rather have Chelsea defense than Kovacic, and they're around the same price range. And then I think Lukaku, in my opinion, is a third Chelsea pick that I would go for eventually. And then in terms of your mention of Odegaard, I do think Arsenal are building enough attacks. I mean, ultimately his I think his first haul was a free kick goal, right? So you can't really expect that too much from Odegaard. I think for him to get hauls, I just think Arsenal aren't creating enough chances. Simply put, to actually be a worthwhile differential at that price range. Maybe when I don't know if Mbeumo's injured, but I think it could be interesting to look at Mbeumo in the potential future. It could be that he's walking with swagger. Fair enough, Sifu. Could be the case. I also like pretending that I'm injured when I'm walking around my house. What do you think about Grealish as a long-term mid? I think Grealish is a fantastic long-term mid. And if we're actually looking at the fixtures, right, like I actually think that there's a good swap for maybe after, let's say, the Watford game for Jota, I can definitely see myself moving into Grealish. That's my personal opinion. If Grealish is a bit safe, right? Because as you can see, after it's a weird one too though, because I think maybe if I'm not interested in Jota, I can also maybe drop him before the Watford game and then maybe just pick up Grealish. Basically, because we all know that when Man City face Burnley at home, that's an annual 5-0 game for Man City. So that could be a good game to basically bring in a Man City midfielder instantly. So I could take a hit on Gameweek 8 as well. I won't start with Cody. This is actually going to be my team selection. My team selection is likely going to be like this. I think Cody's going to be the first person on my bench. I'm captaining Ronaldo for now, but I think over the course of the night, I really might change it to Antonio. And maybe over the course of the stream, I'll change it to Antonio. We'll see. Bamford for ASM and Torres for Sar. Yeah, I mean, if you want to kind of capitalize in the short term, then you can go for it. Patrick, I'm not rolling the transfer. I've actually done 2 transfers already, so I've gone -4 and I've ultimately gone for Sar instead of Greenwood, and then I've dropped Bamford for ASM to accommodate some kind of long-term plans or medium-term plans I have to kind of go into a 4-back. Do we know how long Bamford is out for? Nope, I actually don't have any kind of plans on that. For me, the issue with Bamford is just the fact that I think Leeds have been very poor this season. And not only, am I kind of thinking about, what's going to happen when Bamford comes back, even in 1 week's time, because the issue for me is that Leeds just haven't built too many attacks this season. He's still the focal point, so I kind of like him, but even versus a very poor team like Newcastle, I just think he wasn't getting enough chances. Ultimately, it was kind of one chance where he was kind of through on goal, but he took a pretty poor pot shot at the keeper. And for me, like for Bamford to be efficient as a player, he really just needs to have, or not efficient, but rather a good FPL asset. He needs to get a lot of chances, and I don't think he's getting enough chances. Are you not trying to take too many hits? That sounds dangerous. This is the first hit I've taken this season. I mean, still, like, okay, after my hit, I imagine I'll probably drop to maybe around, I don't know, something like maybe top 30k in the world, top 20k. It's kind of a good position, in my opinion, to take a hit. But I guess you're talking about the fact that I have some maybe future hit plans in mind. I think as long as you're kind of taking in players for a hit and there's a general swing, I think it's okay. Also, I have to kind of accept the fact that I've been very unfortunate with the injuries and the kind of unlucky situation with Bamford getting injured, with DCL getting injured. Just wasn't really expected. Cliff Buckley, yeah, thank you so much. If you guys would like the stream, that would actually be really, really helpful. Livramento Marcel, I'm probably going for Livramento. I think I've answered that already, though. Have Backman doubt in the sticks. Is it worth selling him for another 4.5, say Ramsdale? Or should you just roll over? I mean, I think if Backman is a doubt, then definitely I would say probably roll over to someone else. My only concern is I don't know if Leno is going to play, right? Still with I know he's played 2 games in a row with Ramsdale, and they've done well and kept 2 clean sheets, but I think, I don't know. I would still like to see him play versus... I would still like to see him play versus Tottenham first before I actually go for Ramsdale, because it's not even a good fixture to go for Ramsdale. Do you kind of get my point? You might want to roll a transfer on that, maybe, if Ramsdale is your ultimate kind of goalkeeping target. That's just my personal opinion. ASM or Jimenez, I actually kind of like ASM a little bit more. I don't think Jimenez is a good pick, in my personal opinion. I just think that he's lost a bit of confidence as a player. He's not... I think he's also missed a lot of good chances as well. I think for the last maybe 3 or 4 games I've been watching Wolves, and he's had chances to actually head the ball into goal, very good chances that I think he would have capitalized on 2 years ago, and I think he just hasn't really done that. Views on Adam Armstrong. You saw one of my tweets saying he has poor underlyings, but he seems like the talisman, shoots for fun, and has amazing fixtures. I agree he shoots for fun. The fixtures are definitely good. But I don't really think I wouldn't agree to the fact that I think he's the talisman at all. I still think, for example, Che Adams is a much more interesting asset, even at his more expensive price, just because I feel like he is somewhat more involved in most of the plays for Southampton. Ultimately, when we actually look at Adam Armstrong's was it his one and only haul this season? Maybe I think he's maybe scored 2 goals. I'm not sure, but his goal versus Everton, for example, is a good instance where that was just classic poacher's finish, due to the fact that it just came down to a kind of error from Michael Keane, right? And that's not a promising sign for that kind of being his only haul so far. Even if the fixtures are going to get better. FPL price changes tweeted Bamford will drop tonight, but FPL statistics seems to have him a long way from dropping. I think all the kind of price aggregator sites have different kind of information on things. I do use FPL statistics, but they don't get everything correct, guys. So I just want to preface that basically that not everything that they kind of say actually goes. So I think you basically, I mean, if you're kind of chasing a price rise, you want to try to do it as soon as possible. If you're trying to avoid a price fall, you'll have to try and avoid it as soon as possible. That's just my general opinion. I think you don't want to play it too safe, if that makes sense. The Wolves fixtures are too good for Jimenez not to find his striking boots. I agree with you, Torpedo, but I mean, we've already gone through some of the good Wolves fixtures that are supposedly quote unquote too good, So, like when we look at Jimenez, for example, we've had 0 hauls in. It's hard to see the history of the games, but for example, I would say honestly, Leicester is a good game to get a haul, especially the Leicester that actually turned out in that game. Wolves had plenty of chances there. Tottenham, I'd probably say, I don't think he had many chances in that game, to be fair. You can see his bonus points were negative as well, probably because he missed a big chance. And then in the Watford Brentford games, I mean, it's not a good sign at all. I think ironically their best game was actually versus United, which was the toughest team, right, on paper. But he hasn't really looked good since. Like the chances that he was missing in the Watford game, in my opinion, were a bit poor, and I think it's a tough one to actually think that he makes sense right now. So I'm just gonna go through some Twitter kind of teams for now. Martin Velez has really confused about what to do. Can see myself rolling, using an FT, or taking a hit as well. Jota to Sar and Bamford to Armstrong in my head. Can't tell if you actually have a wild card. I would maybe I would maybe drop Rafinha for Sar. I know Rafinha seems like a better set and forget option than Bamford potentially, but I guess my only issue is that I think at the forward position, I would say ASM is maybe second priority to getting Sar in. I think for the next 2 game weeks, I just think I mean Sar could be explosive in the next 2 game weeks, but who knows? And then if you go Jota as well, you've used Wildcard, yeah. No, that's fair enough. I guess since Rafinha is also not as injured as Bamford, you probably have to maybe move away from Bamford for now. And then if you want to play it safer like that, just do a one transfer, I'd say, unfortunately. You could also take a hit. I mean, that's what I've done. I've played it a bit more aggressive. But I think the reason why I've done that is because I just wanted to free up funds for my team. Whereas for you kind of have like a direct transfer in your mind, right? You kind of have like Shaw, who can go straight to Rudiger as an example. Whereas I kind of wanted to downgrade so that I can have the surplus funds to maybe actually not go for Lukaku immediately. So that I can actually get the City and Chelsea defense that I want without actually going for Lukaku and downgrading and losing that kind of money from Ronaldo just yet. So that's kind of my opinion. It might change a little bit for you and your decision making, but I would say you can also hold this team. The bench, I think Duffy coming in is fantastic. So to be honest, even if Rafinha doesn't play, I think you have a good game week ahead of you. But yeah, I mean, it's really up to your personal plans. Because maybe if you're someone who's not tempted to keep Jota in the short term, then I can understand holding your transfer. What should you do with Torres and Antonio 0.9 in the bank? Oh, sorry, I think I responded to the wrong person there. But Martin, let's have a look at your team. Oof. Okay, Antonio. I would probably go Antonio and then I'd roll Torres. That's my personal opinion. I think Antonio is a little bit more explosive because you already have Sar. So I think there's no kind of midfield haul or like pick this week that would be more interesting than Sar, and you already have Sar. And then when it comes to Antonio, you know, you're basically replacing Bamford, who is definitely not going to play. So that's basically a great kind of side upgrade. And then you don't really have a good bench in terms of someone who's capable of getting a clean sheet, right? So I think the Antonio transfer makes sense. Let's have a look at Seth's team. So bought Grain this week, capitalized on the Norwich fixture. Yeah, that's fine. I think going for Gray this week makes a lot of sense. Dyer off the bench, that's nice. Sissoko off the bench, not bad. As a second option, yeah, really like it. Looks good. Good to go for the game week. Yeah, and then I guess you have similar issues to me in terms of like adjusting Jota and Greenwood, but that's fine. I guess I mean, if you're a fan of Greenwood, I guess you can still say that the Everton fixture in the subsequent week is not bad. Whereas maybe if you're not a fan of Jota, then you can move away from him. So Rio Wang, I have just replaced Bamford by ASM -4, which option Marcel? I'm going Livramento personally. I just think that I always kind of like the fact that Livramento can always get maybe an assist in a game. I don't expect him to score a goal anytime soon. If he does, that would be fantastic for me. But yeah, that's just my general opinion. I also think Marcel had a very poor week last week. I know Marcel actually has had 2 FPL assists, but I would also say they were kind of fluky as well. Even though I actually did recommend the Marcel pick to most people, I still think at the time, considering the fixtures, they were good ones. But as we kind of move away into slightly tougher fixtures, and especially when you consider how poor his performance was last week, Marcel, on an individual defensive level, then I think I'd be more kind of interested in getting Livramento, who's continued to like with his good form. 0.2, want to play 5-3-2 or 5-2-3 formation from game week 7, 5 defenders for buy and keep. Are you suggesting that you have a wild card? I'll probably wait for you to respond, and then I can just respond to Thomas's team for now. This is my current setup for game week 6, 1 free transfer and 0.2 in the bank, planning on wildcard in game week 7. So looking for a 1 week punt, can do Tony to 6.5 mil, or on a striker, or Tierney to 5.1 mil, or on the defender and bench Tony. What are your thoughts? Let's see. So I think obviously Veltman's not bad, Shaw's not bad, Trent's not bad, Sar's not bad, Tony is questionable, Ronaldo. I guess maybe ASM could be a punt. I think ASM might be the most reasonable punt because I just don't see any other interesting midfield punts right now. And ASM does ultimately play versus Watford. I wouldn't say Watford's a terrible defense. I don't think they are. But simply put, at that kind of price range, if you're just going to move one player, then I think maybe ASM is the most interesting. Just going to, just before I respond to some people's tweets, I'm just going to quickly go back to YouTube chat. Should you play Livramento over Ailing? Yeah, 100% play Livramento over Ailing. I don't even care if Ailing plays. It's going to be a bad pick for sure. Like, I can't see how West Ham don't score versus Leeds. That's just my personal opinion. It might be a 1-0 game, but I just can't see how Leeds can hold on to it. Sorry for spamming, but what is Dean's? I think Dean actually seems to be fine, Lord Voldemort. Should you take a -4 on Torres? I think I responded to that. Sorry. You and Dylan are my favorite FPL creators. Thank you so much, Not Sideman. Who should I replace Bamford with? Saint Maximin or Antonio? Antonio for me, for sure. I think he's the priority in terms of forwards if you don't have him already. Southampton have had very tough fixtures. Everton, United City, West Ham United. Maybe he actually converts his shots in the easier ones. Armstrong. Fair enough. But I think when you also look at Armstrong's kind of shot creation stats, right? It's not just the fact that he's taking a lot of shots, which is actually important. It's where he's taking those shots. He's taking a lot of long shots. He's taking a lot of kind of low percentage shots, in my opinion, that don't carry much XG, which is why his XG per 90 stats are very, very poor for what you would call maybe what you would understand to be like a talismanic striker. So that's just my general opinion on that. I do know he likes taking a shot, but at the same time, I feel like they're very easily savable shots that most keepers should be comfortably kind of dealing with. And in some of the kind of positions where he was in good positions, so for example, in the Man United game, I remember he was near post, could have collected a rebound to score a goal, and he kind of whiffed that opportunity. I just feel like, I'm not saying he's unclinical. In fact, that kind of Everton, the first goal he scored might have been very deceiving. But we'll see what happens. I would just rather take a wait-and-see approach. I kind of like taking strikers when either they've shown historic performance, and they make sense in terms of like a little bit of recency bias. So for example, we saw a full season of DCL and Bamford, and they played it, I would say, exceptionally well for the kind of prizes that they were. And it made sense to get into them. But, Jimenez had missed basically a full season of football, and then it's a little bit trickier for me to actually justify whether I actually want to go with Jimenez, right? Because I think you also have to factor in that there's obviously a big part of competitive football is the mental aspect of the game, and coming back from such a weird injury. that's definitely going to be hard. Keith says he wants ASM. Is it important to get ASM for this game week, or can I wait till game week 7? You could probably wait till game week 7. I would probably just say that usually I think when you have the chance to play versus Watford, it's a nice fixture. But I guess if you think on balance, a -4 is not worth it, then I wouldn't disagree with you. As I said, I kind of like maybe holding ASM until I can move into Tony. I'm locked in for now. Yes, my captaincy might change, but in terms of the actual setup of my team, the starting 11, I'm locked in. So this is going to be my team for sure. As I said, it's just about picking my captaincy correct. I'll try and actually maybe suss out some more Rafinha injury news, because I really think that if Rafinha is not playing the game, that the Antonio captaincy pick makes a lot of sense. Bench Rafinha or Cody? I'd probably bench. I'd probably bench Cody, I guess, because if Rafinha actually is playing, he's fit to play, then I think he can definitely call still. West Ham are still a side that I think can kind of give their clean sheet away quite easily. But I think actually West Ham, ironically, have really good underlying stats. So if you actually look at FBref, for example, if you look at West Ham stats, we look at expected goals allowed, right, which is basically a statistic determining how many kind of good opportunity chances that one team is giving away. You can see, for example, Man City is basically considered the best defense in the league in terms of statistics. And then Brentford, and then Aston Villa, then Liverpool, West Ham, and then West Ham are kind of in the same bracket as Man United, Chelsea, and Wolves, who have all had maybe one bad game each. I would argue to say Chelsea hasn't really had a bad game, but I think they have given good opportunities away. I think the most alarming game was that kind of Aston Villa game, where I think Aston Villa had a very good first half, as an example. Man United have actually been probably over conceding goals, I would say. Their defense has looked pretty on point, I think, as a back four, but as I mentioned, always it's about getting overwhelmed in the midfield, and sometimes also leaving a lot of pockets of spaces where, for example, Benrahma can sit, outside the edge of the key and then just look for a pot shot. But yeah, I think Aston Villa is actually quite good defense, which is also kind of a concerning point about the, Ronaldo captaincy. Just to kind of balance the argument between Ronaldo and Antonio. But just going back to your actual general point in terms of actual like stats for West Ham, I actually think their defense has been quite good. It's just the fact that there's individual errors always, it seems like, with their team, because of the way that they kind of press, and kind of players get pulled out of positions because they overcommit on certain kind of actions of play. Should I take a -4 in Torres? I think generally that question has been asked in terms of the -4 for Torres. I think if you want to kind of -4 in Torres, it would probably be for Sarr. I don't really see anyone else being worthwhile of being a -4 punt for this week other than Sarr, in my personal opinion. Who wins tomorrow? Southampton versus Wolves. I mean, it could be a draw. Southampton have gotten 2 draws in a row. I'm tempted to say Southampton will win. Maybe that's because of the fact that I have Livramento backed. But I think Southampton could actually win that game. I think Rafa said Dean was fine. Yeah, absolutely. As Rob was saying and confirming as well, I think Dean is fine. He didn't really mention Dean in terms of injury news, but do remember that he is a bit of a fraud. He has been a fraud actually for the season in terms of the press conferences. Dean will play. Yep. Would you replace Bamford with Maximan or Jimenez? Got Ronaldo and Antonio ready. I mean, I personally replaced Bamford myself with Maximan. I wouldn't really replace him with Jimenez. I think we've already missed some of the good fixtures for Jimenez, and he's kind of blanked in them. I'm just not that confident in him. My thoughts on Reece James and Christensen. In my opinion, if you already have Reece James and Christensen in your team, you should actually keep them in your team. I would rather have a stronger bench, and maybe have one Chelsea player sitting out each week. And kind of do that, as opposed to maybe waste a transfer. I still think Christensen is going to play the bulk of the games this season. Same with Reece James. So I think you can keep them. It's kind of the similar situation where, for example, if you were someone who was maybe doubling up with the Man City defense last season, and you had Stones and Cancelo, for example, or maybe like Diaz plus another, even though Stones and Cancelo weren't playing every week, they still ended up being very, very good value picks for your team on a weekly basis when they were playing. You don't have a good feeling on Ronaldo. Villa will probably stick to a back 5 and can see them being defensively solid. I somewhat agree with that. But I think the thing about Ronaldo is that he can clearly exploit defenders just running through the kind of shoulder them at times. And I think, before he came to United, a lot of people were thinking, oh, he needs crosses. And clearly, when you see the United system, they're not kind of built to cross. And I think the fact that he's still found great opportunities to be the poacher that he is and to actually capitalize on his positioning, because there are players like Bruno who are so creative, and can split defenses in a moment's notice. I think Ronaldo can still haul, in my opinion, just with how good his kind of positioning is. -4 to get Gabriel Jesus out. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Jota replacement around game week 7. I think around game week 7, it's a weird one because I feel like you might want to actually keep Jota for game week 7 because I don't think too many midfielders have a good game week 7, maybe with the exception to Sarr. But Sarr then subsequently has to play Liverpool. And then if you swap to, like, for example, like if you look at the other interesting defenders, or midfielders rather, I would say they're probably Man City midfielders who obviously have an equally, arguably bad week versus Jota. You have a feeling Ferran Torres is going to score against Chelsea. It could be. I wouldn't disagree with that, right? I think for Ferran Torres, for me, would still be a hold, even though he hasn't hold in the last 2 weeks. What do you think of Emmanuel Dennis as a diff? Yeah, for sure. I think Dennis can make sense. I mean, the beauty of Dennis is that he's an enabler, right? So what he does for your team is you kind of inject him into your squad. Like, let's say if I brought in Dennis, right? Obviously, as an interesting argument, right? If I just brought in Dennis, look at how much money left I have in my team. Like, I have 4.8 million. I could literally just go for a 3 million if I'm not like a fan of Antonio, and I still have enough money to like maybe upgrade another defender, right? Like, let's say if I downgrade Jota, for example, to another kind of enabling type midfielder, I could go with premium with a very premium defense still, as long as I go thin in the midfield. I mean, Dennis is a very, very good enabler for the next 2 game weeks, and that's exactly why he's gotten a price rise. But yeah, I do like Dennis as a pick, especially since with the forwards as well. We have so many people injured, so many people kind of not playing or not having good fixtures. So it's a good time to go for Dennis if you want. I'm just gonna respond to some Twitter kind of messages. So Device as messages team here. Should I take out Jota for Sarr for -4? I went for -4 last week also. And should I play Duffy instead of somebody else in defense? I kind of like your defense, to be honest. I'd be happy to not play Duffy. You already have Sanchez in your team if you want. I guess if there's one person you want to take out, it'd probably be Reguilon, but I still think he's a good pick for the week. In terms of Jota, I guess the concern for yourself is the fact that Rafinha might not play. Maybe you want to keep Rafinha for a while, and that's fair enough if you want to do that. Then I guess you can go -4 for Sarr. I think, yeah, Sarr could be an explosive pick this week. I think another thing I'd also look at as well is with the amount of injuries to your team, I guess the bench is very thin. So Jota is a playing player this week. So that is my only concern. I'd say maybe if I was actually to take someone out, it would probably be Rafinha for now, just so I can guarantee that I have a good, strong, capable team playing this week. I'm not exactly sure what the actual Bissouma injury news is, so that's the issue. I think you could also just play this team this week and maybe live with it as well. But yeah, I think I would still probably play. Maybe I'd actually play Duffy over Reguilon. Like, what do you guys feel about Duffy versus Reguilon this week? Will you ever open my Twitter DMs? I will at times. I think it's just the last time I opened my Twitter DMs, there were just way too many kind of responses, and I felt kind of bad because I couldn't respond to people. But yeah, I mean, Henry, if you message me, because I know you sent me a super chat before, I mean, you can feel free to let me know your Twitter or just at me on Twitter, and then maybe I can open my Twitter DMs for you, because I try obviously my best to answer people who've given me a super chat as well before. So someone has asked Torres versus Greenwood. I mean, I think that the thing with Torres is that positionally, at least, he's the most interesting asset, like out of maybe Jota, Greenwood, and not positionally rather. I mean, I think he's kind of level with Jota in terms of the expected goals and things like that. But then in terms of comparing to Greenwood, who's playing right mid right now, I think the issue is that you kind of have maybe Cavani to deal with as well, which is a problem. And then you have Ronaldo as well, basically hogging that striker's like / center forward position. And because of that, I think Greenwood's position is very much affected. Whereas when Torres is probably going to play, he's going to be a striker for the team. And I think that is more interesting in terms of whether he gets better chances than the other. Greenwood or Jota? I think Greenwood has short-term slightly better fixtures, but I think Jota still, for me, I think has higher chances of hauling in individual games. I know he's completely missed the sitter last week. That was so terrible for me to actually watch. But I got to live with it, and I still think Jota makes a lot of sense for this week. You never walk alone, Anka. Greetings from Florida. Would you consider a Leicester midfielder instead of Sarr? Honestly, probably not, right? Because I think the issue with the Leicester midfielders is I actually think the Leicester midfielders are slightly overpriced. In terms of talking about Madison and Barnes, right? So they still, for me, are slightly overpriced because I just don't think Leicester is building enough attacks, and you can kind of see that when you actually look into their kind of expected goal numbers. I would say Vardy still is the focal point right now, and he still hasn't been too interesting. I think I would just, and then obviously you have Tielemans, who's quite cheap, I suppose, but still he's not. You're kind of hoping that he scores long shots at times, maybe gets an assist here and there. It's just not really worth it, in my opinion, to kind of pick box to box players too often. I feel like those are the types of players who'll haul on the weeks that you don't expect to haul, and that's the basic issue with them, I think, fundamentally. Thoughts on Vardy? I think Vardy is a good pick for sure. Tezago, nice streams. Keep up the good work. Trying to work out where you're from. Your accent sounds like Scottish mixed with American. Yeah, I've heard that my accent basically places me from everywhere around the world. But I'm actually from Hong Kong. I went to an international school, so I guess I picked up a very Americanized version of English. And then living in London, I guess my accent has somewhat changed over time. But I don't think I basically, I mean, I don't come from like a English speaking kind of first language country. So when I learned English as my first language, I guess I picked up a lot of different accents, and somehow they've submerged into one. Transferred in Sar, haven't taken any hits. Should I bring in Ben Rahman at ASM for Bamford and Sissoko? So let's just quickly respond to this tweet here. I wouldn't bring in ASM for this week for hits. I think so. Let me just think about your playing team. So you have Ronaldo, you have Antonio, that's two. Then you have three midfielders for sure. And then you kind of have that back four. I still think, I mean, you've clearly gone for a 4-3-3 structure. And I guess maybe you can't take a hit on Bamford. Could you? I think you could still play 5 defense here and then play maybe Sissoko as first bench. I don't know how you feel about that. I think it's actually totally fine in my opinion to go for that, because the way I see it, right, is the week after this you want to have those surplus funds going into, let's say, improving your defense, because you're clearly going for a back four, right? At least that's what I can tell from looking at your team, or what I would infer. So from looking at that, I would probably say you want to save up the cash that you have into actually upgrading your defense, so that you can maybe get a Man City defense, and Rudiger, for example, and then actually upgrading your defense so that, let's say, Duffy becomes a very, very solid rotational piece as your fifth defender. And then you can live with the fact that maybe Bamford comes back after international break and then not take hits, because I feel like you already have Sarr, who, in my opinion, is, I think Sarr, as I said, for a lot of people, is the kind of pick that makes a lot of sense to go for a -4-4. And if you have a good enough bench to kind of cover Bamford for this week, I think it makes sense. And in my personal opinion, you do have a good enough bench. I've gone for ASM just to be a bit more risky, so maybe you can do the same if you want to follow through. I wouldn't take two transfers though for this. QAQ WTAT. Use Wildcard. Once I have City and Chelsea defense, Lukaku maybe Gameweek 7-8. I have no idea what to do, and also the Bamford issue. You've used Wildcard already. Okay, yeah. So I think long term we got to fix maybe Shaw, arguably maybe Jota, maybe Traore. Then we also have the Bamford injury issue. I think what you have to do probably this week, given the fact that you have a good bench, is you have basically a team that's capable of playing a back four this week. You have 4 midfielders who are capable, and then you've got 2 strikers who are capable. So I think maybe you don't adjust the Bamford transfer now. If you want to take a punt on Sarr, I think you can maybe drop Traore and do that. You can probably keep Jota. You can maybe transfer Shaw in the subsequent week so that you can go Rudiger and then play maybe like another 4-back formation. And that's probably how I would play it from here. Or you can upgrade someone like Williams and then solidify your back four, if you'd like, for a bit. And then maybe when Bamford returns, you kind of have that flexibility again. Should hard, so you have no wild cards. So okay, that's fair enough. I see what you mean. You want to play 5-3-2 though, so obviously you're still a few transfers away from that. I think Livramento should be a keeper. I think you just get Rudiger probably, and you get Alonso, in my personal opinion, if you have to pick 2 Chelsea defenders right now. That's kind of my opinion on that. I'm just gonna quickly check on the chat from YouTube for a second. 1992 Hip Hop JJ says, Fran, why wildcarded this week? Sanchez, Trent. Do you really want to wildcard into Shaw? I guess your team is strong enough where the next transfer can just be Shaw. Thoughts on this Gameweek's decision? 3-4-3 plus Dennis Sarr, or 3-5-2 plus Sarr and Dennis? Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. I kind of like a 3-5-2 plus Sarr and Dennis. I think that makes a little bit more sense. Because there's no way you're dropping Antonio and CR7, right? Because if you played a 3-5-2, you're basically saying you're not playing one of Antonio and CR7, which I can't see being possible. But yeah, I would definitely play a 3-4-3 there because I think your forward line has a very good, all have very good game weeks and fixtures. Pookie or Woods, I would probably go Pookie, but honestly, I don't think either of them are good picks. I think they're differentials, but they're differentials because they're bad picks. That's just my personal opinion right now. Do you think Greenwood out for Pogba is a good move? Enjoying the stream, by the way. It's a little bit tricky, right? Because basically Pogba was most effective in playing this kind of left wing position in the team, and with Rashford being so close to fitness, I feel like maybe a side grade into another Man United midfielder doesn't make too much sense. I would probably at this point in time try to look for downgrades in terms of midfielders so that I can actually put the surplus money into other areas of the pitch. That's kind of how I would consider it. In terms of Greenwood to Havertz, I still don't really like Havertz too much as a pick. I think Havertz is a player who, in terms of the eye test, I think he improves the quality of play around him. But when he's been playing in Chelsea, I think he hasn't been the talisman. It's clearly Lukaku. So if I was to play an attacking player, it would definitely be Lukaku. You can also see in some of the heat maps as well that some of the fullbacks actually have more of the ball and are in more attacking positions at times in more dangerous spots than Havertz. So I think Havertz is a little bit too expensive for me to actually be worth the swap. And as I said, in general, I'd rather kind of go down. Are you not tempted to go for Antonio? I am very tempted to go for Antonio. With those injured defense and West Ham being on form for captaincy, yeah, I am actually very interested in West Ham. The best Man United attack for Aston Villa must be Cavani, Ronaldo, Greenwood, Fernandes, and Pogba in midfield. I mean, yes, in theory, that's obviously a very, very strong attack, but you also have to think about the balance in terms of the midfield, right? What can that team do when they get collapsed in the midfield? How can they deal with counterattacks efficiently and things like that? Can rely on Man City players as we don't know rotation of Pep's team. I think you can rely on a few players, right? You can rely on Diaz, and you can rely on maybe actually Grealish, who has, to be honest, played all the kind of Premier League games so far this season and was clearly rested in the cup game, which tells you, I think, that Pep trusts in him to start most games. Am I ethnically Hong Kongese? That's actually a mouthful. I am a Hong Kong. I am half a Hong Konger. Yes, my mother was born in Hong Kong. How can I show you my teams and thoughts for future transfers? You can contact me. I think through a super chat or maybe like a detailed super chat. But I also plan on opening basically a Patreon as well, where I'll try to respond to my patrons on a private channel. So that's kind of my opinion. Henry Shepard says Hong Kong International School. I went to Hong Kong International School called Discovery Bay International School. I didn't go there. I went to South Island School actually. If anyone's from Hong Kong and might know some international schools. How many more games you'll give to Greenwood? The actual answer is 0 because I actually don't have Greenwood in my team anymore. I have Sarr in my team instead. My Twitter is Total Tactics FB. Jason Oon. Wait, what? Question mark. Oh, thanks, Henry. Nice profile picture, by the way. Yeah, so that's where you can do it. I'm just gonna respond to some Twitter tweets. Chat, sorry. Recent pick 0.1 in the back. How to best position myself for Chelsea 3x. Honestly, as I said, I still think you maybe move out of Semedo as an example, and you just go and you keep James in your team. I think you just make a decision between Rudiger and Alonso and try not to waste the transfer because obviously you're going to have other issues in your team, as is apparent with the fact that Bamford already exists. In terms of this game week, I don't know if you're taking a hit. Oh, you're not. Sorry. So you can actually definitely downgrade from Bamford. I'm probably a big fan of maybe going for. I guess Armstrong has the best fixture swing possible. But I do kind of like going short term because I feel like ASM still has good medium term rewards as a player, and I actually just fancy him just a bit more. But if you kind of want to set yourself for the medium term and try to rid yourself of kind of long term maybe transfer issues, then I think Armstrong makes sense because he actually has a very good fixture run. I would probably swap, as I said, Semedo. Is it worth holding on to DCL? I mean, if you've held on to him for so long already, probably yes. But I just didn't think it made sense to hold on to DCL 2 weeks ago, which is why I took him out because I think the injury expectations were actually quite poor. I guess you can probably just go for Antonio this week if you have a transfer. I think it makes a lot of logical sense to maybe get out of DCL if he's not going to play versus Norwich. Is it confirmed that DCL is not going to play? I think so, yes. Use wildcard already. I do Bamford to 4.5 forward and Williams to Rudiger. Let me just reread that, sorry. Williams to Rudiger for -4. I do it next week anyways. I want to go 4-4-2 and upgrade Jota to Son next week. So it's either rolling it this week and taking -4 or then the -4. Is there any reason why you're getting Rudiger now, though? I guess you want to... Okay, you want to go Jota to Son next week. Yeah, no, that's fair enough, I guess. But if you bring in Rudiger now, who would you be dropping? You'd be dropping Williams, and then would that change your starting formation at all? I guess, I mean, you've kind of answered it yourself where it doesn't really matter because you kind of have your transfer decision set. So I think the only way I could answer that is by asking you back, like, if you plan to play Rudiger, if he comes into your team. And if he doesn't, then I guess, honestly, you could just maybe move Bamford to 4.5 and then just look at the next week. But yeah, I'm just going to respond to some tweets or some YouTube comments. Oh, sorry, this is a super chat from Abhishek. Trent, Livramento, James, Semedo, Cancelo, Gray, Salah, Sarr, Jota, MacArthur, Ronaldo, ASM, Antonio. Who should I start? Definitely Trent. Definitely Cancelo. Not Cancelo. It's a tough question. I guess I have to predict the Man City and Chelsea game. If I'm to answer this question, I do think Chelsea probably win the game. I don't know if it's going to be a 0 score for Chelsea. I'd probably go Trent. I'd go definitely Salah, Sarr, Jota, Ronaldo, ASM, Antonio. So that's three forwards. You'd go for Gray for sure. And then you go for Jota for sure. So you've got four. Yeah, you've got 4 midfielders. Okay, so you're playing a 3-4-3. And then in terms of defense, maybe I'd go Livramento and James. Because if James doesn't play, I think you should put Cancelo in your first bench. That's my personal opinion. And then I think Semedo is your back bench. Yeah. Just wanted to know, why did you bring in ASM kind of out of topic? Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I brought ASM is because I plan on downgrading my team so that I can improve my kind of backline, without having to downgrade Ronaldo immediately, because I kind of plan to take a little bit of a slower kind of route to Lukaku, and that means that I won't have the surplus funds that I'll get from downgrading Ronaldo to Lukaku, right? And because I've done that, the justification is that with the other 3.4 million in my bank, I can in theory upgrade Cody and Williams into, let's say, Diaz, who is not a forward but a defender, and then Alonso as an example, right? If I'm playing risky, I mean, I'm more than likely going to go Rudiger just because of the situation I have for Christensen. So if I kind of shift into this team in 2 game weeks time, I can do that by going for Saint Maximin. So that's why I've gone for him. Whereas with Bamford, I'd probably have to think about maybe doing something else with him, maybe downgrading to Dennis, which could have been possible this week, but I just wanted to have Sarr. I just prioritize points as well, and I don't want to kind of be stuck with Dennis because I would rather Saint Maximin being a little bit more expensive than Tony, and then eventually maybe moving into Tony when he has good fixtures, right? Because Brentford have a very, very kind of smooth run, in my opinion. Like for example, I would be happy maybe holding Tony, but from the Burnley game to the Everton game, and then probably have to reconsider with how good Tottenham is at that point in time, and then maybe think about it. But yeah, I mean, arguably for these 5 fixtures, I could easily side grade into Tony, so that's kind of how I feel about that. But yeah. Love from India. Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of Indian fans on this channel, so thank you guys so much. And it's really cool to see like how many people from India are actually interested in fantasy football. I wasn't obviously that involved in the community last year, but it's really nice to see how many Indian fans we have in the channel. Show us your team. Yep, sorry, Ofek. I'll just kind of hold it on my team for now while I kind of respond to some comments. But yeah, I hope I responded to you, Abhishek, correctly. I'll respond to you in a sec as well, Henry. Let's see. Livramento for Marcel. Wolves aren't playing well. Yeah, I'm going for Livramento this week. Nahel, I think you want to get Rudiger 1 week early to get first movers advantage. That's fair enough. I guess you capitalized on the price rise, right? So that makes sense. In terms of setting my team, I'll probably respond. I mean, you can try copy and paste it here if I actually read the chat, but I'll definitely read it if it's a super chat, and I'll also kind of respond to messages from my patrons on Discord. Patrick Close Strength. Thanks you so much, Patrick. Honestly, thanks for the kind words. What is the best under 6 mil midfielder? I think Gray and Gallagher are the best picks. I think Gray is very interesting short and medium term. Since he actually seems to have actually improved and seems to be a very direct player. Like I like the fact that Gray creates a lot of separation in the box and kind of has a very strong and clean shot on him. But I think that Gallagher, if you wait another week and maybe have another good observation of him, I think Gallagher can also be a very good long-term enabler in your team, where maybe you get both Gray and Gallagher as an example, and then you actually kind of rotate between them when they have good fixtures. Which players to transfer out, Bamford and Jesus or Bamford and Rafinha? I'm probably a bigger fan of transferring Bamford out because I think the forward situation is very dire now. I think Rafinha is probably less injured, arguably, so I think you can maybe keep him for a while longer. Jesus, I still think, yeah, okay, the fixtures are tough, so maybe you'd like to prioritize Jesus. Once again, it's about looking back into your bench, right? Because Jesus will probably feature when it comes down to between him and Bamford. But it depends on what your kind of bench is and what you can do. Someone's predicted a 0-0. Jonathan, what game is this for? TB12, Hey Fran, Sufal, Livramento, or Torres. Is it just in terms of playing them? Like only one player to pick out of those three? If you can just clarify, that would be great. Bunny D says, hello, Fran. Hey, thank you so much. Avish says, you deserve way more subscribers. No, honestly, guys, thank you so much for the support. Yeah, if you guys are new to the channel, if you could also drop a like on a video, that'd be really, really appreciated. If you could drop a subscription, that would be great as well. I am hoping to try and actually get 10K subs by the end of the year. Hopefully, we can actually do that within the next few game weeks. I'll also be covering a little bit of UCL football, maybe even covering international football if I have some free time. But work is actually getting really tough for me soon, so hopefully I can actually get out the videos that I want to get out. Have you considered Alisson or Ederson? All this money left over and finding it hard to ignore. I don't have a lot of money left over, but I think my priority is maybe improving my defense first. I wouldn't be opposed to upgrading my keeper or maybe moving my keeper to someone else. But at this moment in time, I don't have real plans for maybe moving into another keeper. You got some fans from Mauritius as well. Awesome. I've actually got a close friend from Mauritius, and yeah, I'd love to actually visit there one day. Why not Captain Antonio? That's a good question, Chris. And to be honest, I don't think there's any kind of negative reason why. It's just I think both Antonio and Ronaldo are very good shouts. I kind of want to go Ronaldo so I can play around with the effective ownership. I think I already have a few differentials in this game week in terms of having Benrahma and Sarr and say Maximan, and maybe kind of holding it somewhat closer with Ronaldo would be a little bit nicer in terms of effective ownership, especially since I dropped Greenwood. But if I was feeling a little bit risky, if I wake up tomorrow, you might see that conversion into an Antonio caption. Bench Sanchez or Martinez? Probably bench Martinez, to be quite honest. I think Crystal Palace is definitely a nicer fixture. What do you do for a living? You can't guess my age. Well, I'm definitely over 18. I've been working for a while. I just work in a kind of professional services firm, so I'm an accountant right now, getting my qualification for that. So that's what I do right now. A lot of numbers, basically. Very boring as well. Jonathan Ojal says, Fran, Captain Bruno or Vardy? Do you not have Salah on your team? Is probably my first question. And if you don't, then I probably would captain Vardy, to be quite honest. Start Foster, Foster or Sanchez this game week. Yeah, I guess they're playing Newcastle. Is why you're suggesting that. I would still go for Sanchez for this game week. Greetings from Brunei. Or Brunei. I'm really honestly, I apologize if I've mispronounced it. Is it Brunei or Brunei? I think Brunei. If so, thank you so much for honestly being a part of the channel. I think I've seen you quite a few times, Chibis. You studied at an international school, and yeah, everyone asks you, whether you're from the United States, right? If you go to an international school, and obviously we don't. Is it worth to bring Sarr and take a -4 hit? I do think so, yes, in general. I think it depends on, what kind of issues you have on your team and who you're kind of replacing him with, but I do think it makes sense. I've done it personally myself. Do you think Bielsa, with all these defenders out, might just sit back and deploy a D-block system? Yeah, but I think one thing I have to say in terms of football, right, when you're thinking about when you think about tactics, right, like how often have we seen it where we've criticized the manager? Let's say if they have an attacking philosophy in general or a high pressing philosophy. If they suddenly revert their philosophy and change into playing a deep block, their team isn't acclimated to doing that. So even if they play a deep block, I still think Leeds would get absolutely penetrated tomorrow. You know, you're better off playing your conventional style and the style that you've played all season, or else you kind of risk yourself kind of looking like Pep Guardiola in the Champions League stage match with with Man City, where for example he'll tinker so deeply. Like, as much as I love Pep, not for the rotations, but just generally as a manager, and I respect him for like all the kind of progress he's done in football, in terms of like, you know, progressing tactics and actually like expanding the game, and how we kind of observe, you know, not just the verticality of the pitch, but just the half spaces and things like that. But like yeah, we've seen so many times when teams change their strategy and it just does pan out well. So I just think it's very tough. Brunei, as in eyes, not EY, as in hey, big up to you, sir. Brunei. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for actually correcting my pronunciation. I have both Rafinha and Bamford, Antonio and Jimenez. What might be options? You have both. Okay, Antonio and Jimenez. Is there a question, you know, whether to go into Antonio and Jimenez? I think definitely Antonio for sure. Adama Tassar, I think actually makes sense for a -4. Yes, Jota Tassar really tempting me, even though I have Rafinha and Bamford as problems. I think if you have other problems in your squad, like you probably want to move away from someone else. Like I would still like to have Jota this week, you know. To start, Fran, Torres, Semedo, or Livramento. Yeah, I'd probably go for Livramento there. Actually, do we punt it on Torres? You could. I think if you're feeling risky, go for Torres. If you want to play it safe, maybe go for Livramento. Torres Tassar -4. If you want to capitalize on a wild card, go for it. Fred or Traore on Captain? Is that a serious question, Fred? I can't actually tell who your profile picture is, but if I had to take that as a serious question, you know, probably neither. It'd have to be Traore, to be honest, but yeah. I can't see why you would have Fred in your fantasy Premier League team. You should think about that. Is Grealish a good shout? Definitely. I think after game week 7. So after game week, yes, after game week 7. So I think after the game versus Man City, you know, after Man City Liverpool, you know, you have basically the Burnley game, which I think Man City routinely dominate. So that would be a great game to have Grealish, and I think Grealish is actually, he could arguably be a set and forget option. I know he's only seemingly gotten maybe 1 goal and 2 assists so far in the league, but I still think the fact that he's like a glued starter for Pep is very nice. Someone said Trent has been being sold. That's very weird. Is that because of the illness issues? Yeah, I think that's strange. Cavani is in the squad for tomorrow's game. He was pictured at the hotel. Does that change anything about CR7? I mean, we can have a discussion about this, right? Like, how do you guys think Cavani will impact Cristiano Ronaldo? In my personal opinion, I think Cavani doesn't start the game. I think OGS probably uses him as a super sub. But I think, you know, Ronaldo probably stays on for the 90 minutes. I think you know, Ole actually sees them coexisting up top. But I think when you watch, for example, the 2-man game that, for example, Cavani and Suarez has, you know, in the Uruguayan national team, I think he can definitely coexist with another great striker, and we've seen that as well. Even though he didn't have a great relationship with Zlatan Ibrahimovic in PSG, so I think it's possible. Can you check Twitter now? Thanks. I could in a second. His profile pic looks like Lingardinho. Could be. What's your highest ever finish? I mean, I only played last season as a full year, which was 56k. So I'm kind of new to fantasy in that sense. You know, I haven't been playing for many years now. I've just mostly been watching football, and I didn't really play fantasy because I didn't have any friends who played fantasy previously. Sorry, gonna rise again. Yeah, that's great news. You have to ask the question. Fair enough. I'm gonna go back to Twitter for a second. So let's have a look at Go Hopping's team. All right, so we've got Pogba, just the team photo. Very nice, very elusive. I like the team. It's a bit of a weird week to have this team, obviously, because you're so deep into the Chelsea players, so deep into the to Walker as well for now. And Livramento is on your bench. I mean, I like the team, but it's still, you know, it would really only work out, I think, if it's like a high-scoring fixture or a Chelsea win. I guess you're expecting a Chelsea win because of the way that you've positioned your team. And that's fair enough. I guess if you're backing Chelsea to win it, I like the structure. Ultimately, Gray has a fantastic game week. I think Gallagher arguably has a good one. I wouldn't say Brighton is an easy task at all. But yeah. Let's see. Ramsdale as well. on a tough week, but I guess you have Begovic. Is Pickford back, guys? Actually, is Pickford back? Because if maybe you would want to start with Begovic as a starter, right? Just in case Pickford doesn't play. Don't you think that would be quite interesting if you're go hopping? I think the rest of the team makes sense though. If you're backing Chelsea to win. Mikhail's team. So, what do you think about my team heading to game week 6? I like your team honestly, and I remember honestly, Mikhail, like you started off with, I would say, a very kind of unconventional team. I remember from game week 1, and you've done really well so far. And honestly, your team looks very, very solid. A little bit of fixture proof, but I would say I think Mount seems like he's missing the game, so watch out for Mount. You probably have to play Cody this week. I think the only issue is that your bench is a little bit weak in the sense that you have a Marte who probably isn't playing too much football. You still have the capacity to maybe go out of Mount. I know it hurts because you've gone into Chelsea for a specific reason, but I think with Mount being out, you might want to maybe look at someone else, and maybe do double transfer there potentially. But I still think for the most part, even if you play Cody this week, your team looks very solid. Nico, I hope that's your name. Pretty happy with my team. Though last week I only got 51 points, and also I'm not sure what to do about the Chelsea fixture swing. I'm thinking of taking hits, so you don't have any Chelsea players. That's fair enough. To get in people like James or Lukaku. I kind of like right now probably Rudiger just for safety reasons, and I still prefer Alonso over James a little bit, just because I think on balance I think Alonso's actually going to be playing more games due to how unfit Chilwell is and how poor his performance was as well in the EFL Cup. Only way is Ronaldo to Lukaku, and I think that's completely fine. There's nothing really wrong with going from Ronaldo to Lukaku, right? So I think the way you move into that is probably, I would probably say maybe moving, Williams or Marçal into a Chelsea defender. I don't really know how much excess budget you have, but that's the general plan because Duffy is someone you can keep forever. Diaz, I think you just keep him for a long term. Gray and Sarr now become enablers, and you can think about maybe moving away from Jota. I think, for example, personally, right, if the priority is probably still to get Chelsea defenders over Lukaku, arguably. I think that you can hold Ronaldo, to be honest, until game week 8, perhaps, or maybe 9, where you can swap away from him. Because I still think that Leicester fixture is not a bad fixture. The only kind of key fixture you miss, right, is maybe, let's say, Lukaku versus... who's he playing? Lukaku is playing Southampton game week 7, right? So that is the first captaincy shout for Lukaku that is quite good. But so does Ronaldo have a good fixture in terms of Everton, especially if they have, remain to have some injuries in their team and aren't playing very well. Which was the case versus Aston Villa, to be honest. I think their level really dropped in the second half in that game. And you could see they were kind of overwhelmed by individual qualities. So a lot of kind of defensive errors from Dean, for example, being quite critical there. And I think, United can definitely exploit that. So maybe I'd say the priority is just to move into Chelsea defenders, probably Rudiger first for a bit of safety. To be fair, you do have a very strong bench, so maybe you can go for Alonso if you kind of want a little bit more aggression in terms of the points, expected points rather. In terms of Bamford, I don't really know the injury news, particularly because I think, I just don't have what the update is in terms of his specific ankle injury. I mean, it could be a bad one, and I think on that basis, maybe you can move away from Bamford. I wouldn't really double up on Watford, with Dennis, but there are great options in terms of that kind of 6.5 or 6.7 to 6 range, right, where there's a bit more of a long-term option in terms of Armstrong if you want to kind of move away from Bamford if it seems like his injury is a little bit more long-term. But I think, for the most part, I would probably look towards going for upgrading your Chelsea defense first before you actually look at maybe dropping Ronaldo, because I think Ronaldo still is a fantastic asset, and you clearly don't have space for the premium right now. Brainless. So how to best position myself for Chelsea 3x? Once again, I think you can keep James. I think I've responded to you actually. Or do I get Antonio instead and forget Chelsea 3x? I mean, the thing is, you don't have to get Chelsea 3x by game week 7. Like, that's just my genuine opinion. You can get it slowly, if that makes sense. You already have Lukaku. I would probably capitalize on Antonio this week for sure, though. Yeah, Henry, I mean, I do like your profile picture. It was quite a funny one. Who should I bench out of Marçal, Livermore, and Christensen? I would probably actually play... Yeah, I would stick with what you have, honestly. I think what you've done is exactly right. And honestly, I wouldn't change your team at all. I think it actually looks great. The exact kind of layout of your team makes sense. Interesting, of course, that you've gone for Jimenez and benched him, but I think... I guess the only tough decision between Jimenez is with Gallagher, right? Do you like? I guess yeah. I mean, I guess the only decision I'd make is between that. Probably I'd still actually go for Gallagher just because it's an interesting differential and you could really benefit from that. So why not? And he could get clean sheet points too if it happens to be a low scoring game. Margella, we looking Gucci slime institutionalize. Let's see. Livermento comes in. Yeah, I think if Livermento is on your bench, you're probably always looking Gucci. Whether it's 10 out of 10 Gucci, I think that's a question. But yeah, not a bad team. Wildcard Sharma, thank you so much, honestly, for the donation. That's honestly that's probably the biggest donation I've ever had on the channel. So thank you so much. Transfer out Cresswell or Soufal this game week. Planning to use wildcard game week 8. Yeah, so I think okay, Cresswell or Soufal. Do you have both of them? Is that? Because I think if you have one of them, you're probably more interested in having someone like Cresswell this week. Then again, though, if you're planning to use wild, can I actually see the rest of your team? If you can just type it down, I'll try to respond to you as soon as possible. Because I would like to kind of know your team before I kind of respond in terms of the transferring out. I think this is a fantastic week to have a West Ham defense, to be honest. Because who's going to be scoring the goals for Leeds this week, you know? I think you can actually keep both of them, arguably, if you have them. And thank you so much for the donation as well. Really, really, really appreciate it. I don't think Trent will be benched if he's available. Because honestly, the options that Liverpool have in right back are so much worse, you know, compared to the drop off between Robertson and Tsimikas. I know Milner played quite well, but still, it's quite different. And Yogi sent a super chat as well. Thank you so much for that. Who will hold game week 6? Is 4-4-2 the new template? I don't think so. I think 4-3-3 might be a template as well, because you know, with a 4-4-2, right, you're probably, if you're suggesting a premium like a 3-medium template, that could make sense. Or maybe when you're talking about, let's say, a 4-4-2 with Dennis as a flexible option, right, added to the team. So I think Yogi, like the way I'd respond is if you have Dennis, then I guess the 4-4-2 makes sense, because basically it's constantly flexing between a 4-3-3 and a 4-4-2. I do think that the new template in 2 weeks' time will be a back four, though. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like the level of the defense that Liverpool, Chelsea, and City bring to the table is so insane that there's nothing wrong with going for these options for the course of the season. In terms of Rafinha, I've got no news on that. Pickford is back in training. I don't know. Maybe if they rest him, I guess you can still go for Begovic. Any news on Rafinha? I don't have news on that. I'm going to put you in a timeout. I'm sorry about that. Please don't try to spam the chat. Tony to say Maxman, I probably wouldn't do that. I would probably still hold Tony throughout this period if you already have him. But ASM does have good fixtures ultimately. I guess it comes down to whether you have a wild card later in the day, because I guess Tony has like, you know, 3 or 4 rough game weeks in a row. But yeah, if you want to do that, then that's fine. So Massimo will pop off. I mean, I hope he pops off. He's in my team, so that would be nice. With that injury in Leeds, why don't you just keep them for one more game week? Who are we talking about? Sorry, in terms of like holding on to some of the injured Leeds players. I think on that basis, you know, it just depends on whether you actually like Leeds playing, right? I just haven't been a big fan of how Leeds have been playing so far. Woodkarsh, honestly, please. Thank you so much once again. Sanchez, Shaw, Soufal, Cresswell, Duffy, Salah, Jota, Sarr, Greenwood, Ronaldo, Antonio, Foster, Rafinha, Amartey, Obafemi. You've won free transfer. Okay. Honestly, I would keep I would keep the West Ham players for this week, right? Because once again, they're not going to put much on the table, I think, especially if there's a potential that Rafinha could be injured, right? So that's my general opinion on that. I think you could actually roll a transfer with that team, because you already have Sarr, right? Who's basically, for me, the most explosive pick in the game week. If you roll a transfer, you have, let's say, Ronaldo and Antonio captain, which is a huge differential, nice pick. You definitely, yeah, I think you stick with that team, because basically you might want to move away from Shaw, for example, move away from one of Jota and Greenwood for the subsequent week, and you're probably better off holding that transfer. And as I said, this is basically a lovely fixture for the West Ham defense. So yeah, that's my general opinion. I don't think you transfer out the defenders. I think you actually play the team that you have this week. You roll a transfer because you have Sarr, who's the most explosive pick for me once again, and you make a decision basically on whether you want to go deeper into the Chelsea defense maybe move away from Shaw, for example, and then also maybe touch up another midfielder as well. But thank you, honestly, once again, so much for the donation, Cars. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks again. Roman LB says, should I bench Sar? I mean, definitely don't bench Sar. I can't believe you're thinking about who do you have in your team that actually allows you to bench Sar, St. Max, and Greenwood. I would like to know, actually. It's quite interesting. It's Antonio's problem, not mine. What are we talking about, sorry? Antonio rumored to have pulled his hamstring in training today. Vlasic starting instead of him as it stands. Is that confirmed? Is that trolling? I'm confused. Rafinha's fine. Was pictured getting off the Leeds coach at their hotel. Fair enough. I mean, just because he's getting off the coach doesn't mean he's fit to play like 90 minutes, though, right? That's I guess some of the concern that people have with regards to Rafinha. Another 10 rocks. Let's go. Honestly, thank you, Wildcard. Seriously, thank you so much for the donation. It really means a lot. Thank you. Bunny Magic, looking at you. What is going on with the Antonio thing, guys? I'm very confused. And also, if we can try to be a little bit nicer to each other in chat, there's no real reason to insult each other. I mean, yeah. Why did you take a hit against St. Maximin in? Yeah, so basically, I think the reason why is I think I'm in a pretty healthy position in terms of rank. So I kind of have that kind of nice buffer, I think, of points that I think I can now justify maybe a hit just so I can kind of change my conventional strategy. Because I think with all the forward issues, I would kind of like to pick a talisman who, in my opinion, is actually St. Maximin. I think he's really interested in me in the last 2 game weeks, and you can see it with the amount of bonus points he's been getting, even in games where he's got an assist. So, for example, look at the West Ham game where he got 34 bonus points, which is actually a huge kind of tally in a game week, right? Where you only have kind of 1 contribution, especially as a midfielder. So for me, I think he's been basically the most direct kind of talismanic player. The fixtures are actually quite nice, in my opinion, for St. Maximin. I mean, this run of games, with exception to maybe Tottenham, is still quite nice, in my opinion. And I kind of like the straight pivot. So the transfer to Tony, I think, in game week 10 when he faces Chelsea is a really good one for me. And I kind of wanted to move away from Leeds. It's kind of almost acknowledging that I made a mistake with the Bamford transfer, but I think the fact that he was injured was basically the turning point for me. And I'm happy to take a hit because I do think St. Maximin can haul quite severely in these kind of few game weeks. I wouldn't say he's super explosive, but I think he's such a consistent, direct attacking threat that I think he can get an assist and a goal per game, and I think he would already kind of make up for it. Honestly, Wildcard, once again, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Honestly, yeah, it really means a lot. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a lovely game week. Honestly, with the kind of West Ham defenders you have, it's a huge differential. So best of luck to you with that. I would actually, like, in draft, I think I have two West Ham players as well. So I would love to see my. Actually, I'm gonna. I don't know if I still have Cresswell on my team in draft. Let's have a look. This is my draft team, guys. So I have Cresswell as well, who I'll definitely be playing this week, alongside yourself. And Bamford is out as well, so that's another fantastic kind of great little thing for my draft. So I guess I have to play Apiriqueta, I guess. Maybe I'll just save in that order, just in case maybe like DCL plays, right? If he magically returns from the dead, because Rafa Benitez is a fraud. But yeah, let's just go back to regular fantasy. The chat is wilding for sure, but I think it's Utkarsh who's been such a pleasant guest today. So thank you. Should I transfer out Fran Torres to Asar or Gray? So once again, I think a lot of people are asking me about whether to move away from Torres, and I think my general response is that if you don't have a wild card, I think you can hold Torres. But if if you're kind of looking to maybe kind of dead end your team in a sense, right, and then you plan on having a wild card, and because you have a wild card, then you can actually move away from Torres for now and capitalize on the fact that Sar has really good kind of fixtures. You decided on captaincy yet? I still haven't really decided. It's on Ronaldo for now, but yeah, I am slowly leaning to Antonio as well. Seems to be everyone's general opinion as well. Well, if someone is purposely spreading misinformation, is it actually misinformation? I think that's all I just wanted to communicate, really. But yeah, I mean, I don't really want people to be yeah, like, I mean, in terms of Trent, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, he could still be feeling a little bit unwell, right? But I think it's more likely that he starts. In terms of Antonio, I didn't really hear about the injury news, so I guess I wouldn't say it's misinformation for sure, but I mean, hopefully it's not, right? or hopefully it is rather, because I have Antonio on my team. Best players for Wildcard. Are you talking about this game week 6, Johnny, or are you talking about in subsequent weeks? ASM is just more of a showmaker than a talisman. I would disagree with that. I would disagree with that. I think the stats also pan out to say that he's actually a very interesting kind of decision maker in the box. I don't think he's, some sort of lethal kind of goal scoring presence, but I think when you actually look at the kind of numbers for, like let's say in terms of like expected assists per 90, I think he's at 0.25. And obviously Newcastle don't really create too many chances, but I think like when we look at the way he drives the ball, it's hard to show through pure statistics. But I think even if we look at something like expected, just to show that he's at least a talisman for the team. So expected goals, he's obviously a little bit low on this. He's actually very, very low. But this is per 90 minutes. So if you want to look at expected goals, he's actually kind of second ranked here in terms of 0.8, which is arguably a little bit low, but actually FBref does purposely underrate expected goals so that they actually can accurately reflect stats. Also, as you can tell, Callum Wilson has been benefiting from kind of the kind of, I think, penalty chances he's had as well. But in terms of expected assists, like Alan Saint-Maximin actually rates very, very well in that kind of category. And when you actually watch him play, I think the kind of distinguishing factor for me is that he's a very good dribbler, but I think he still makes correct decisions in the box, which is why his expected assist numbers are high. In terms of expected goals, I think it's only increased on a per game basis from him when Wilson has been out of the team. So I think that shows that he gets to play in more kind of maybe, let's say, lethal positions where he's going to be taking shot creating opportunities. One thing you can obviously say is that the kind of surrounding cast around him is very, very poor, and maybe he doesn't get enough chances. But I would say his underlying numbers are actually quite interesting. So he still ranks third if you basically extrapolate Fraser, who basically plays garbage minutes for the team, right? He's played very, very, he's played the most minutes and still ranks very highly in this category in terms of the kind of expected goals versus expected assists. Not many strikers actually have any kind of expected A numbers, which is why I think with Saint-Maximin, he can still get good bonus points because he's also so involved in the play. He gets a lot of bonus points as well, which could actually mean that even if he gets like an assist as a whole, he could still do well. Fake news, Antonio. Yeah, that's fair enough. Apologies about that. I'll need to follow up on that. Klopp confirmed Trent is available and fit to play. Okay, that's fair enough, Bunny. Yeah. I'll make sure to have a little bit more of a stringent look at the chat next time. Could you show us your wildcard draft for this game week? Yeah, I could do that. If I was wildcarding for this game week, one of the big decisions is going to be whether you want to have Sanchez, right? Because Brighton have nice fixtures. But then I guess people are really interested in Ramsdale. I'm still not sold that Ramsdale is going to be rotated, and I don't really want to deal with keeper rotation where my keeper is going to be benched and I have Steele staring at me at the face. But I guess you could go for Foster, right, as a 4.0 because he could have the chance to play, so that would be a good bench. I would probably still stick with Sanchez at this point in time. I think if I was wildcarding in a week's time, I might change it to Ramsdale if he gets to play the Tottenham derby. I'd definitely go for Livramento. Then I'd have Rudiger on my team for sure. I'd probably maybe move into Diaz a week later, because I don't think it's going to be a good week for City defense. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd definitely have Trent my team. Sorry. It's outside Arnold, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I'd have Sar for sure still. Because I still think it's a really good punt, and then you can actually make your mid kind of cheap in price. I would go Gray. I'd go Gallagher, and I'll explain why in a second. I'd still go Ronaldo, maybe. I just think we probably want to set this team up where we only have one transfer to Lukaku if we want to go Lukaku instantly, right? So I'd still go Antonio. Saint-Maximin, we'll probably think about that in a second. I haven't actually thought about a wild card before, but I'm just trying to think about it reasonably. So yeah, of course we have two more kind of rough City games. This game week and the subsequent game week. So we can maybe hold off on City defense. So we can think about that in due time. I think you might actually want to double up already on Chelsea defense, arguably. Just because I think Chelsea get onto better games faster, and you can probably live with the fact that you can play Chelsea defense this week, and then maybe accept the fact that you don't have to kind of move into Chelsea. I'd probably play Sissoko as my 4.5. I don't really care who's in my team. But I said I'd have Foster, right? And then I kind of have options where I could maybe keep Benrahma. But I'm not sure if you guys have the same price budget, so maybe you have less flexibility in that area. I'm basically... Oh, what am I doing? I have a very special player that I haven't added into the team. I dropped Benrahma, actually, and it goes to low. I think, yeah, Gray is slightly better because what Gray and Gallagher will do is that they give you the flexibility to play a 4-3-3 every week, and you can basically pick the best feature. So, for example, let's say like versus Newcastle, you pick Sar. You can still maybe play Gallagher the next week, but as you can see, it's clearly a bad game. And then in that game, you can play Sar versus Leeds, for example. When Sar has a bad game week 8, conversely, then maybe you can swap on to someone like Gallagher, right, who plays Arsenal. Probably a nicer game, for example. Gray, I wouldn't say he's set and forget. Obviously, the Man United game is a little bit tricky. You probably want to have a stable kind of playing. I wonder actually if you go Diaz this week. Maybe you have to, right? Maybe you have to kind of fit the team. I go Diaz, let's just say, because he's the most expensive defender possible. You have a lot of money, of course, here. Maybe it's too weak in midfield, is it? I'm not a big fan of upgrading to any of the 5.0 keepers, so it's a little bit tricky. So we can actually work on this together. Obviously, in terms of forwards, like we're approaching territory where we have the potential to upgrade into, let's say, Grealish, for example, in two game weeks time. But it's still, we kind of have to live with these two fixtures, which are a bit rough. So I want to have Sar. Ray Gallagher. Tough one. The issue with the forwards right now is because we're so cash strapped. I think like if DCL came back, like this could be quite an easy fit. Or you could actually try to go for a 3-medium, right? Once again. Like I wonder if it's justifiable to go for a 3-medium. It probably is. We'd probably just have to drop Diaz for it. I wonder if it's because I have so much excess value from my kind of team value going up. Maybe go Zaha instead of Gallagher. Is Ronaldo ownership, is it too much to risk Captain Antonio? I mean, I think it's definitely going to be a risk to Captain Antonio because of the effective ownership, and that's a big issue. Captain Fernandez is crazy since joining United. Has played 5 games since Saturday at noon. 4 official Premier League. He always scored. I mean, why not? I don't think it's a bad pick at all, to be honest. You'd go for Greenwood this week? Should you buy say maximum for Game Week 6? I think if you don't have too many issues in your squad, it's actually quite a logical pick. Replace Ferran Torres. That could work, but once again, I'd say wait on the wild card. I really don't know what to do with my third striker because I feel like we're in such a tough issue. Like where like all the forwards basically who are actually worth money are sort by price, right? Aren't interesting like at this point in time. And I'm not gonna like stretch this team to go to Vardy and Jesus like doesn't interest me. Like arguably Ings has a nice fixture swing, right? But that's in 2 game weeks time. It's tough to kind of move to him now. Like Richarlison not interesting. He's probably out as well. Jimenez not interesting. Like Watkins is arguably interesting, but same issue with Ings. And then we're pretty much going to touch Armstrong and Tony soon, right? If we're not going for St. Max. We could probably go St. Max in a wild card. We still have a lot of cash remaining. And because we have such a strong defense for this week, like I guess we could still go for a punt in terms of a midfielder, and then we can downgrade when we see necessary. When we see fit, rather. Because ideally, right, you play like from this week, like for this week you're actually good. Like this week is really nice with this team, right? Because you can play a front 3, you can play a midfield 4, right? You can play Salah, Gray, Sar, and Gallagher, who all have good games. You can probably just bench Diaz, or if you want to kind of hedge and kind of make sure you have an egg in each basket, you can probably go Alonso and Diaz, right? Because you probably 100% know Alonso will play and Diaz will play. If you want to actually, like, if you're unsure about the Man City-Chelsea game, you can probably play those 2 and then just play Trent and Livramento. I think that's how you both play it. The 1.7 mil, like, I guess if you really want to upgrade your keeper, you could. I wouldn't do that. The only other punt is, like, okay, if you're not interested in Gallagher this week, who actually has a decent fixture, to be honest, As some people have said, like you can maybe just punt on Zaha, for example, right? But Zaha is just like, for me, it's like, what's nice about Gallagher is you can put him on your bench and not feel too bad about it. But like Zaha is one of those players where I think the issue with Crystal Palace is they're going to struggle versus like big teams in general. Like maybe Leicester in the kind of form they're in isn't the best, but ultimately there are going to be games where, like, let's say Zaha just gets shut out, and then you're going to feel bad for having someone who's at a good price, in my opinion, and not going to have the most efficacious game, I guess. So that's a possibility. I think you can just kind of punt someone in the midfield. The issue I think right now is when you look at this draft, actually the person who fits in the most really is someone like Rafinha. And I know Son has tempting fixtures for some people who've mentioned Son, but I just can't really justify going Son right now. I just think they're in really poor form, in my opinion, Tottenham. And I'd like to see some things change tactically with Nuno to see whether Son makes sense. Because I feel like he started some games where like Son is a centre forward and he just gets too little touches for me to be interesting, especially at that kind of price. And that's nothing as a slight in terms of Son as a player. I think Son's fantastic, but it's just, yeah, the state of things right now. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's roughly the team I'd like to go for this week, because I actually think this sets you up for Chelsea perfectly, and you have a plentiful amount of enablers in your team. But yeah. How about Son? Yeah, as I said, Son is it's just a bit of a no-go. I'd like to actually see Spurs be able to open up teams who play deeper blocks. Can someone please explain what is Wildcard? So yeah, basically a Wildcard, right, is a chip that you play on a specific game week where you can permanently change your team for free. So usually what happens, right, when you change your team is you fall into a situation where, let's say if I transfer someone, let's say if I transfer Jota, right, for I don't know, Pogba. Like, do you see how it says -4 here? Because I've already done my free transfer. The idea behind a wildcard is, in this specific game week, if I had the wildcard chip active, I would be able to make transfers and they would be permanent on an unlimited basis. So technically, your free transfers would be unlimited, and you could change the entirety of your team for free, basically. But you only have 2 wildcard chips per season, and your second chip only comes out in the second half of the season, so after game week 19. Rafinha or Gray? I think Gray, because Rafinha has injury issues, and Gray's playing versus Norwich. I think Son has proven himself as a player. I just think that Spurs as a team haven't proven themselves. How many PKs did Crystal Palace get so far, anyways? I think 0, right? Crystal Palace. Oh, okay. That's your argument for why Zaha's not interesting. Is that what it is? Can you look at the team I sent? Why Reece James, proven and not good fixtures. I don't have Reece James on my team, if that's your question. Or why not Reece James? Is that your question? I just kind of like Alonso right now because I think he's equally proven and he's a Chelsea player, and that's pretty much it. And I think Rudiger is that kind of safety anchor because I feel like he starts the most games. Armstrong or ASM? I mean, Armstrong I think is a better long-term pick. I think not really, like, just a safer long-term pick in terms of maybe if you want to, yeah, just safer, I guess, in the sense that he's cheaper, right? So you don't feel too bad about maybe benching Armstrong, but I think oh god, yeah, but I think that game was a bit conditional, wasn't it? The Tottenham game was like versus 10 men. Yeah, that was a tricky one. Why don't you downgrade Ronaldo to Lukaku? I mean, I just kind of fancy Ronaldo, to be honest, over Lukaku for now. Especially at this fixture, I can't see why I'd want to have Ronaldo. As in, I don't know, I just feel like Ronaldo's performing so well for United, and the team is playing so well around him that I think I can hold on to him for a while. Love from India. Hey, Aaron. Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, so I think we've got a lot of love from India today as well, from a lot of other kind of users who are kind of playing from India, so that's really nice to see. Targeting Norwich, personally, yeah, Mope Game Week 8, Lukaku Game Week 9, Rafinha Game Week 10 is a nice streak. Tony Game Week, yeah, exactly. Tony's nice because, yeah, like that kind of pivot from Game Week 10 from ASM is quite nice for me. Gray or Benrahma? Sar or Gray? I probably like Sar, just a little bit short term punt. Gray or Benrahma? Probably at this stage in the season, I think maybe Gray potentially over Benrahma. I just have Benrahma because he's been in my team, and still the fixtures are not bad. Should you double down on Chelsea defense? I not for maybe on this week. Yeah, I think you actually could. Honestly, I don't think it would actually hurt you too much. I can't see City like exploding for goals. Fran, what transfers are you making this week and what to do with Bamford? So I already know. Yeah, it's fine. I know you weren't here, so that's fine. I'll cover it. I basically dropped Bamford for St. Maximan. I dropped Greenwood for Sar. And I took a -4 hit because of it. Leicester defender, West Ham defender, probably a Leicester defender. Like, yeah, I agree with Pereira. Um, but I still feel like it's just not worth it. Like, I feel like both those teams, like the thing this season, right? It's not the fact that Cresswell's a bad player. It's not the fact that Pereira's a bad player. But it's just like when you look at the 5.6 to 5.7 to the 6.0 range, like those Chelsea players and these City players are so cheap compared to what they bring in terms of clean sheets. I just can't see a world where it makes sense to really go for the West Ham 5.5 or the Leicester 5.5 when they're so close in price to these more premium defenders. Like, I would rather have a Man City defender as centre back and a Chelsea centre back who never hauls in terms of goals and assists, just because the clean sheet factor is so tremendous. And you can see even in games where, like, for example, look at the Southampton game, right? What happened? Diaz got a +3 or +2 bonus points in a game where nothing happened. And those are the games where they could be very possible, right? Because I feel like the backbone from Chelsea and City and even Liverpool are very, very strong. Even Van Dijk is arguably at a cheap price. If you disagree with me, like I can definitely see myself at one point in the season, maybe like if I'm continuing with this back four, right? Like, why wouldn't I go for Van Dijk after maybe, like, let's say the West Ham game at West Ham's home? You know, like, why not? I think that would make a lot of sense to myself, even doubling up on Liverpool, especially since so many people are going to be dropping Jota, right? But yeah, that's pretty much how I see things right now. I'm going to quickly check Twitter so I don't miss out too much. Rudiger and Lukaku for Marcelo and Ronaldo. Thoughts on getting Antonio in for Bamford tomorrow, and Rudiger and Lukaku for Marcelo and Ronaldo. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that sounds good. Good transfer plans in general, and then hopefully Rafinha comes back soon. In terms of notifications, I'm going to try to respond to these. Irakli's team, you're rolling a transfer. Planning to bring in Rudy and James for Omobali Day next week. Yep, fine. I guess, I mean, and also just touching on the James topic, I don't think Reece James is a bad pick whatsoever. I just slightly prefer Alonso. Because of how things have panned out, especially with, Chilwell seemingly still not in good form, and also the potential, I think, in weaker games, maybe Reece James gets to play UCL, which seems to be the priority for Tuchel, right? And then maybe, I think, someone like Hudson can play, or Apilikata can be moved on to the right wing back position so that Christensen can be accommodated and starting in some games. Yeah, but in terms of this team, yeah, downgrading Jota to Rafinha I think makes sense as well. I guess the issue with this team probably is Traore. Like, you want to maybe think about him and maybe transfer him in the future, but I think obviously as a 3-man draft, it makes a lot of sense rolling the transfer this week if you want to. I would personally like to punt on Sar for this week, but I can completely understand you sticking with this team if you back Wolves. Couldn't text you who should I start in captain. Scholes Army. So I'd still, honestly, I think, like, I mean, the safer captaincies could be Ronaldo, and I can't bring myself to saying Ronaldo's a bad captaincy shout. I think Antonio is feeling a little bit more risky because you're just going to be playing versus that effective ownership, and maybe I will end up doing that if I really want to explode. Like, maybe try and get myself to the top 1K at the end of this game week, but we'll see. Should you take out Sa for a cheaper goalkeeper? Is Jota a keeper if he doesn't score? Generally a bit cash shots, but I want to get DCL. Yes, I think you can get DCL into this team, right? If you want to just maybe downgrade midfielders. I think Guaita and Sanchez also make a lot of sense too. Apologies, my keyboard is very, very annoying for you guys. 1 hour 45 minutes. Yes, indeed. I think we've actually made it that far. Play Tierney or Livramento? Probably Livramento. You already have the Chelsea City defenders. You currently have Vestergaard. I mean, I don't see why there's a point to have Vestergaard if you're on a wild card, right? Because Livramento just makes more sense. And I wouldn't double up on like a mid-table defense. Thoughts on Ricardo Pereira on a wild card? I know he plays basically like a right winger, and he's honestly assisted, I think, Bardi already twice this season. But I think the issue is just that the lack of clean sheets really hurts. Because if you think about it, right, like assists are already better. Sorry, I mean clean sheets are literally better than assists, even if you're a defender. So that's the issue for me. Marcelo Livramento, I'm probably taking Livramento. I'm probably gonna log off, guys. I have hit that kind of 1 hour 50-minute mark, I think, for the stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the stream, please drop a like and also subscribe to the channel for more content. I try to produce video content, and I'll be doing a deep dive into the Chelsea team and exactly why I think you know, the way that I do in terms of some options in the future. But yeah, Josh's team. Respond to that quickly, actually. It honestly looks good. I'm just not a fan of Traore, to be honest. So Roman says, I like the profile picture as well. Good in-betweeners reference. Rolling a transfer. Not sure who to bench out of Greenwood and ASM. Wow, you're actually... Okay. I can see why you're, I guess, benching Greenwood and ASM. Honestly, I would probably bench Greenwood. I know this sounds... You've got such a strong team, actually. Like that bench is so strong. It looks so strong right now. Do we want to double up on the Brighton defense, though? Just in case? Would it be not maybe like better to maybe diversify and get a Southampton defender? I guess that's the only thing I think about. But the team looks great. And also, like, the capacity to roll a transfer, absolutely, it's there. So, yeah, definitely makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, honestly, thank you guys so much as well. Have a good night as well. Have a Fran for president. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys. And also I'll try to make the UCL video over the weekend so I can kind of cover that. But hope you guys have a lovely week. Just so I can kind of leave off on a good note, I'll show you guys the team that I'm picking. Once again, I might feel I might wake up tomorrow. I might even do a deadline stream tomorrow where I change my decision between Antonio and Ronaldo. I'm leaning on Ronaldo just so I can hold on to my effective ownership. But what do you guys think about me pressing this button? Great stream. Yeah, thank you guys so much as well for joining us today. Is Rondon worth it? No, definitely not as a weak punt, because I think DCL probably comes soon. You have an international break as well. I just can't see. I mean, like, if you're wildcarding immediately after and you're not taking a hit for it, maybe that makes sense. Do it, Fran. Using WC, yeah, that's actually true. That's I didn't even think about that actually. It's gotta be Ronaldo captain. You can just see Rondon plotting about doing nothing for 60 minutes and being subbed. The thing with Rondon that's the benefit for him is that, you know, there's no one, they don't really have anyone in that team to sub him off with, because basically he was backup for DCL, but DCL's gone, and Richarlison's not there either. You have a great rank. I try to preserve rank. You don't need to be risky. I'm keeping CR7 captain. Not got the balls to do Antonio. That's fair enough. Yeah, if I'm waking up tomorrow feeling a little bit ballsy, I guess I'm going for Antonio. But for the most part, I think it's a Ronaldo captain. You don't want to sell Bamford. Could you play Allen or Duffy? Yeah, I think you should play Duffy. I think you should play Duffy. Even if you have to double up on Sanchez, I think it's worth it. You know? Because ultimately, like, what? Are we saying Allen's, like, maximal points potential is, like, roughly 3? Like if you look at his assist for Gray, it didn't make any sense, right? It was like he literally passed to Gray, who did a great solo goal, carrying the ball, like, I don't know, 40 meters or something. Like, he's not gonna get an assist. At least I'm not expecting it. Torres out, Sarr in, Jimenez out, and Antonio in. I think, yeah, that makes sense, Sorbet. If you're going for a wild card. I guess I might have to leave you guys without changing my captain to Antonio. But if I do feel like changing my captaincy to Antonio, so I can make a huge punt and go for it, then I will let you guys know on Twitter tomorrow. I will post it on Instagram as well. But yeah, have a wonderful weekend, guys, as well. Enjoy the games. Remember also, don't get too worried if fantasy doesn't go well for you. Ultimately, we're all here because we love football first and not fantasy points, right? So that's pretty much it. All right, take care, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.